要过年了，你是不是打算看看别的工作机会呢？是不是很久没有好好整理一下履历表了呢？或者是不是一直觉得自己的履历应该还可以再更好一点？在接下来2个单元，我们要来教大家如何写出杰出的履历。From a good resume to a great resume。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管双语沟通力的 podcast。我们希望带给大家最实用的沟通工具，包括了成功人士对全球市场的分享、职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。Hi, I'm Sherry, founder of Executive Plus. As a language trainer and certified coach, I've trained hundreds of managers from Fortune 500 companies such as C.O.R.E, Google, Deloitte, and Yahoo.And
I'm Nick, Director of Communication Strategy at Presentality.I've helped startups raise millions of US dollars in funding and train the executives of publicly listed companies to present on the global stage.
Welcome to the Executive Plus podcast,
where you can take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast, episode 41.Over the next 2 episodes, we're going to share with you the tips and tricks to go from a good resume to a great resume. With most of the world going online and remote working happening for a lot of international companies, this is a great time to test your chops and go after that international job of your choice.
没错，因为现在虽然疫情实在是大家还不太确定什么时候会好起来，但是呢，这也代表了非常多的公司，尤其是在国外的公司，它开始不会因为你必须要工作的 visa 作为一个限制，所以其实有蛮多公司会开始可能会招很多不同的国际的人，那你可能就是 work from home. So, 这个时候其实是一个非常好的时机，可以好好的整理你的履历表，然后呢，让你的履历表看起来更杰出，更能够让对方能够看到你的优点。
Now, even for those of you not looking for another job, this might be a great time to go back, use the exercises, and reflect on your top job skills and what can make you valuable to the company. So, in part 1 of this series, we're going to take you through some really quick exercises to think about what makes you valuable to a company. And we're going to do this around the idea that if any of you have been with us since the beginning, an episode we talked about, your self-introduction is not about you. Well, that extends to your resume. The key to your resume is not to talk all about yourself.
那在今天这个 episode， 因为我们要讲到是杰出的履历，所以应该有非常多的人，你们其实已经工作了蛮多年，那你们现在希望更能晋升的一些机会。那这个时候呢 ，executive summary 就变成你履历表上面非常重要的一部分。那这个部分呢 ，executive summary 它也可以到你的 LinkedIn profile 里面，都算是非常重要的部分。So， 那今天我们想要利用的一个原则，一个 methodology， 也就是 Nick 跟他的 co-founders 他们一起建立的一个叫做 C.O.R.E 的原则
Right. So what I'm going to share with you today is a bit of the baseline methodology that we use at Presentality to help people think through their personal message, through their company message, or through any kind of communication strategy. Now, the key for this, which we're going to talk about in the first step of CORE, C-O.R.E, is C, to connect. And this is when I said, your resume isn't always about you. It's actually about the value you create for a company. And that's what we talk about in the first part, C, connect.
So, Nick, you often run these core trainings with companies or startup companies. So now today, it's going to be a little bit different, right? So this is kind of like a personal core.
We've actually used this personal core that I'm about to share a bit with when working with individuals who are either switching jobs or who are trying to find their own strengths. And the idea behind this is very much a brainstorm. And with part 1, the connect, is actually thinking very specifically, who do I want to talk to? In the case of people seeking for new jobs, it's actually thinking about who's on the other side of receiving a resume. It's not so much that I send a resume to this company, which is a big black box that I don't know what happens, but you can actually very specifically picture when I send it to a company, there's someone on the other side. There's actually a person. Maybe it's a committee of people, but there are people on the other side who are reading this. So how is it that your resume is supposed to build a connection with them when they're receiving maybe thousands of resumes every year?
所以我们如果在做这个 exercise 的话，那我们从connect 开始，也就是建立连结嘛，开始。So what is the step one that we need to know?
So step one of the connect is actually to start brainstorming, and we'll use something called a stakeholder map. But in this case, very simply is you can start to think about there's multiple levels of people on the other side of the company you're trying to connect to who need to go through your information. Level one is just the first person who will receive your resume. Now, if you're looking for an executive position, level one may be a recruiter. Or if you're just sending it to a larger company, it may be the HR department. Some person in HR or some committee in HR who's trying to fill a role. And the first step of connect is actually think about what's their measure of success. It's not even to sell yourself to the company, but to think carefully for a recruiter, for an HR person, what's their measure of success?
所以简单来讲就是你要先了解一下 OK 这个接到你履历表的人是谁，他是 HR 里面的人吗？还是说他有可能是你的直属老板？ It could be like your direct supervisor, right? Potential direct supervisor. 因为如果透过了人家的 reference, right? 你可能直接就到达了这个老板，或者是他可能是不同部门的老板，也有可能。
Now, people may think, well, I don't know these people. How do I know what they care about? But there's a few indicators that you can look at. For example, if you notice that a job listing has been there for a very long time, one idea may be the measure of success for people isn't the speed in which they find someone to fill the job. Their measure of success may be at the quality of the candidate or to have very specific skills or experiences in order to fill that position. So time is not a worry for them.
Okay.
Now, the reverse is maybe you will look at an HR bank and you'll see that they have lots of job postings, but they're just constantly going up and down, up and down, up and down. So maybe for them, a measure of success is speed. This is about finding people as quickly as possible and then maybe trying to adapt them to the company.
OK， 所以有可能如果你是在网络上面好了，你可能是从 Glassdoor 或者很多不同的一种 website 跟 platform 上面找工作的话，你可以从它的时间点，比如说这个工作 you know 它已经在上面非常久了，那你可能知道说他这个找的人他可能是希望找到一个非常适合或非常 quality 非常好的人选。那如果他有很多常常换他的这种 job posting 的话，那他可能是一直在找不同新的人，他想要马上就要找到这个人 right?
Yeah.
So 从这个地方你可以知道说他认为他能找到对的人，这个所谓的对的人是什么意思。
Right. And another example that I think people often forget about is recruiters. They may think, oh, recruiters are just trying to find anyone to fill a position. But a lot of times, recruiters get paid based on how long the person stays in the position. And they don't make money unless the person stays in the job for a certain amount of time. So a lot of times with a recruiter, they may be selecting people based on like reliability. So maybe you have great experiences, but you change job every 6 months. A recruiter may see that as a huge danger. Because if I don't get paid unless you stay in the company for a certain amount of time, or I get a bonus on that, I'm going to find people who are stable.
Are we talking about a headhunter?
Yeah, headhunter.
Okay, I see. 所以很多猎头的人，他们作为他们的 reward 的方式是看这个人能够在公司待多久。所以如果你是很喜欢常常找不同工作的人，一年就换一个工作的话，可能这个工作这个部分就不太适合你，或者是你要怎么想要 cater 你的 resume， 让这个对方也能够感受到你的忠诚度是够的。
Right. So the second level of connect is to think about who's the final decision maker for this particular job. If it's more of a low-level or a mid-level job, probably your decision maker is just someone in HR or a hiring committee within the company. So thinking carefully about what they want. But if you're looking for a higher level executive position, again, your resume's job is to get the gatekeepers to hand the resume over to the decision maker and then get the decision maker to like you. So you actually need to think about two levels of people to appeal to.
所以第二个部分就是要了解到底谁有最终的决定权。比如说这个人他其实是 HR 的部分呢，还是说他是一个可能是 CFO 也有可能 你必须要了解到底谁会做最终的决定。
Right. Now this may seem very abstract. So how do we make this more concrete? What this means is when you're applying for a job, you should not stop your research on the job with the job site's listing. You should actually look into the company, which means, again, maybe I want a higher position job. I should look into the company and find out which director I'm going to work for. So the first job of my resume is to get the people in the HR to be interested in it. But if I think that I'm going to work for this director, somewhere in my resume, I should have something that appeals to that person. Like maybe that person has a specific background. They worked for IBM, which you used to work for. And so you would just say, as someone who worked in IBM, I worked under the leadership of these people, which may include that person. So when you're thinking of that second level decision maker, you should look up their profile. You should look up who your potential boss may be and try and fit something in your resume that will appeal to that person.
So to actually look into this, who is this decision maker? I would say, do you think that we would go onto the company website and try to look for that information?
Yeah, company website, LinkedIn profile. If it's a larger or more famous company, then you can probably find old interviews. But the idea behind Connect is you should never go into this position totally blank. Right. Even if it's a startup, probably that person has a LinkedIn profile or probably they have a very basic website. But you should always look for information about who's in the top, who's the decision makers in the company.
That's it. Yeah, I think a lot of people make this mistakes by they just kind of like you said, 就是只看到这个 job listing, 就是看到这个 requirements, and then that's it. They don't want to do any more research. They don't want to do any more homework. They don't want to spend more time on that, and that's something that it's really 很可惜啦。因为有的时候你真的去做多一点功课，你会 find out 更多的 information， 而且这个对你在履历跟面试上面当然都一定是加分的效果。
Right, and the whole point of this is to actually increase your chance of getting in the door.
Yeah.
Maybe you have exactly the right experience, but when someone's digging through hundreds of resumes and they all look the same, I have no motivation to interview 1,000 people. So I'm just going to look for someone who looks different or who very specifically speaks to me. Because again, as an internal HR, that's my measure of success, to find the right people for the right job. So if everyone looks the same, even their experiences may be different, I'm not going to spend any more time on it. So as the person seeking the job, you should spend more time.
Okay. So now that we know how to connect, which is 建立这个连接，那我们第二个步骤呢？
The next step is to offer. And this is what people most jump to is, here's what I am. The key behind offer is what makes you valuable to the company. So here's a few key questions that you can ask yourself in order to build out the main meat, the main parts of your resume. The first question would be, what are the key facts people should know about you? Meaning is, if someone only said in 10 seconds, tell me the most valuable things that you bring, the most valuable experience or the most valuable skills, what would those be? And maybe that's just 2 or 3 things. But it's like, I want the person to know this. No matter what, they must know these things.
Yes, I remember this step vividly from when you do personal core with me.
Yeah.
The 10-second rule, 真的 它真的就是 set 那个 alarm, right? 就是 10 seconds. 如果你在这10秒钟你想不到其他的，表示它可能不是非常的重要。但是在这10秒钟你想到的东西，表示是你最具有代表性的价值 right? It's basically,你带给公司的是什么东西的那个的 value 在哪里。
And the reason that we set this very quickly is because this is the critical thing. Most people want to give you an entire backstory, but it's like, here's the value I bring to your company. This thing that someone can understand quickly. And part of that becomes this, your resume is not your life history. And this is a mistake most people try and write like 5-page resumes.
Yes.
Your resume is to get someone interested in talking to you. So that's why just outlining very quickly, I want you to know this above anything else. I want you to know this success or this experience or this skill above all the rest.
So basically, anything you can come up with, it doesn't have to be adjectives, right?
No.
It could be anything that you could think of in that 10 seconds.
Right.
Okay. All right. So what's the second question then?
The second question is, what's the feeling you want people to have about you? Which means, even though we're applying for a job, there's some part of our personality or there's some part of the way we make people feel that can really allow them to trust us or connect with us. So, for example, do you want people to look at you and go, wow, this person is mega super professional. Like, this is the most professional person I know. Or do you want them to feel like this is a really friendly, I want this person to be my coworker, I want this person to be my friend because they're very trustworthy or they're really friendly.
所以这个部分我们其实要找的就是一种 personality traits, right? 比如说 professional or humorous maybe or creative maybe, 你要人家怎么样看你。
So the third question is something that's a little more difficult to think about, which is, what is something you are the most proud of? Now, pride is not about what am I world leading, like #1 executive in the history of all the world, right? Or not #1 leading, but it's something that you have overcome or something that you have built that you're proud of. So, for example, one of my co-founders is a speechwriter and presentation coach. But he often talks about his first story of giving a presentation, he actually fell off of the stage. Or he was so afraid of presenting that he would just hide away until the moment was over and he didn't have to talk in public. And for him, he was proud of his ability to get over that he had built himself into a professional speaker, into someone who can coach, because he knows what the other side is feeling. He knows what it means to have stage fright, to have anxiety. So he's very proud of his ability to overcome this and then teach it to other people.
所以这个部分的重点并不是在于说，你一定要 lead 大概50人的团队啊，或者是要得什么样的奖，它是你 personally 在你的人生当中 what makes you, really proud of that moment, right? It could be very small, but it's special to you, right? 对你来讲是很令你自己感到骄傲的，而不是人家的眼光，是你自己。
Yeah.
Okay.
The next question is back to that connection. What benefit can someone get from working with you? Which means if someone works with you, what do they get out of it? It's not what I think is amazing and is important to the team, but it's like, when someone is working with you, are you always delivering results on time? So you're very reliable. I know for a fact when I give you a project, you're going to show up and do it. Or maybe you're a really good listener. When everyone else doesn't quite understand my idea, you have a lot of patience to listen and understand my idea and help me to express it.
所以就是跟你工作跟你共事最大的好处是什么 right? So, 刚刚 Nick 有所讲到说你可能是一个非常好的聆听者啊，或者是你永远都会把所有的工作你都会在 deadline 之前能够缴交出去啊，或者是你可能是一个很好的观察者等等，你跟人家工作最大的好处在哪里
The fifth question you can ask yourself is, what kind of problem are you good at solving or you're interested in solving? the key factor here is something you like or enjoy solving. Maybe you're really good at something, but you hate doing it. No matter if you sell that skill, when you go into the job and someone goes, wow, you're supposed to be really good at finances. Here's all our financial work. And then you're miserable, it's going to be obvious. And it doesn't help the company and it doesn't help you. So it's good to think, what kind of problems do you like solving? Maybe these are logistical problems, but maybe these are also internal problems. You like coordinating in teams. You like how people build consensus. What kind of problems are you interested in solving?
所以不只是你最在行解决的什么事情，而是你最喜欢、最 passionate 解决的什么事情 right? So I would say, for me, for example, I like solving more of a people problem. Let's for example, 有些人就是尤其是 HR professional, 他对于这种人与人之间的问题，他最喜欢帮人家去解决，那是也他的 passion.
Right. Or you can take that to say even a project manager. People may think project managers are about keeping things on deadline and talking to the client, but maybe those internal communication skills are very important for coordinating your team, connecting your team and a client. So this can be a very important kind of challenge that you're interested in.
Okay. So what is the final question?
The final question is the one that takes a lot more thought. And the final question is, what's your unfair advantage? By unfair advantage, what we're looking at is, what is something you just do really well that it's hard for other people to compete with you on?
也就是说是你有而别人没有的。Is that an easy way to say?
That's the simple way to say it, yeah. Or it may be is you have that ability to an extreme over other people. Maybe a lot of people can do what you do, but not to the speed or to the efficiency or quality that you can.
So is there an example that you could offer?
For example, what I have been told by others is my unfair advantage is the speed at which I learn things. So I'm able to have like one conversation with a client in an industry or a sector that I know nothing about. And when we get into biotech, that happens a lot. But I'm able to have very professional and intelligent conversations with someone just because I can pick up what's important quickly. Or after having the first conversation, I can go home and I can read and absorb a lot of information really fast. So the next time I have a conversation, I don't need to ask them to explain the basics. I can get into very detailed conversations with them. Now, another version of that would be my other co-founder, Zona. Zona is someone who I can watch over and over again become friends with someone almost instantly. Like the first time we meet a client, they will trust her and call her and contact her as their point because they like her so quickly. And I have yet to see someone else do that as effectively as her.
So is your advice, all of these 6 questions, is it something that we absolutely need to ask ourselves? But what if we cannot come up with a good answer by ourselves? Can we ask our friends or coworkers?
Yeah, of course. Now, think carefully about the context. If you go around asking your parents, like, what makes you amazing, the answer may not be so useful within a professional setting. But it is useful to go around and ask your coworkers, be like, what is something that I do really well? And can you give me, and importantly, can you give me an example of that? So that you can start to gather this information. So I would suggest with any of these 6 questions, brainstorm yourself, but also go around, ask coworkers, ask friends who know you in a professional setting to also help you answer these questions.
OK， 所以我们刚刚讲的这个6个问题，我们都会把它放在我们的 handouts 里面。So don't worry, you can always have something that you can go back to. 那在接下来呢 So out of that 6 questions, what do you do next?
So after you've brainstormed all these 6 questions, and you have found a few companies that you want to apply for, when building your executive summary, what you should do is look at what the company thinks is important. Then look at your skills and choose the top 3 things you think would be important to that specific company. Probably brainstorm a lot more things, a lot more attributes than 3, but your executive summary is about getting interest. So based on what the key things that company wants, or again, if you've done your research and you found that the director you want to work for has given a speech where he said, these are what make a great employee, then you build your resume and your 3 points to fit that.
Okay. So can we kind of come up with an example perhaps?
If I was to take these 3 things, a basic flow would be the most important thing to the company, an example of that.
Okay.
The second most important thing to the company, example of that. The third most important thing, an example of that.
Okay.
Now, I've taken a friend of mine's resume and I've broken down the 3 things that make her a talented graphic designer if she was looking for another position. And after going through this, the 3 things that came out is her flexibility, her speed, and that she's a big team player. These are the 3 characteristics that became very important to jobs she wanted to apply with.
Okay, 所以这3个是她的优势嘛
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I will go the top most important one, an example, the second, an example, the third, an example. And her executive summary will sound a little bit like this. A versatile graphic artist whose talents include graphic design, animation, and illustration. Designed for a variety of industries, including biotech, tech startups, and food and beverage. Consistently produces high-quality work within tight timelines in order to keep pace with the startup lifestyle. Team player who often coordinates between project managers and the design department.
所以从这三四句我们就可以听到了 flexibility, speed 跟 teamwork. 也听到了非常完整它的优势在哪里. So would this just be an executive summary then?
Yeah, so this would be the top of your resume, an executive summary that someone would read and go, okay, does this person have the qualities that we think are important for the job?
All right. So, 我花了一些时间没有错，但是这个 executive summary 才能够让你能够 really stand out from all of the candidates, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what would be the next step then?
So the next step would be to take the 3 things that you built in offers and what we call reinforce, which means how do you prove these things? Now, in your executive summary, again, you heard it's very short. If you have numbers to prove something, so a lot of people put like 15 years of experience or has led 50 teams, that number or data is really important. Also thinking of stories of when I say that I'm flexible, what is a really strong story that would show my ability to flex or to adapt to a new situation?
好，所以 reinforce 这个部分就是强化嘛。那你刚刚讲说是利用一些数字、一些 data， 它去作为这种去强化、去 support 你刚刚所讲的你的优势嘛。So you mentioned stories. Would that go into the executive summary?
That one may not go into your executive summary exactly, but if you have made your resume and your executive summary based on these things, when you go into the interview process, it's good if someone goes, hey, you talk about being a hard worker. A lot of people put hard worker on their resume. How do you prove it? How do you show it? So someone's like, when you say hardworking, can you give me an example? You should have a story ready to go. This is what I mean by hardworking, and here's how I did it. Same thing, testimonials can be a great way to reinforce. Now, before you used to have like people they would call and give you a testimonial. But now, in days of like LinkedIn or uploading an electronic resume, a lot of people just have an ability to go and say, here's where clients or here's where coworkers have endorsed me or talked about what I have done for them.
So would you say that in this part, reinforce part, which is 强化这个部分, would you say that we could use this in later on in the interview?
Right. I mean, this may help in your executive summary to, again, those numbers that very specifically show up in your executive summary. But this is a step that we always take someone through in the assumption that they're going to get the interview. And if I said these things in my executive summary, I better be able to back them up when I have a longer conversation.
All right. All right, so what's the final part then?
So the final part would be execute, which is how do you actually tailor your resume, which perfectly lines up with the next episode on how to tailor your resume, which means not every job that you apply to should receive the same resume. Otherwise, you may receive the same response, which is no.
没错，所以在我们下一个单元也就是可能 continue 我们这个最后面 core 最后面这个一个部分，也就是执行 execute。那我们在执行的部分，我们就会再讲到你要怎么样去量身定做你的履历。因为当然我们在找工作的时候，可能一次我们找了3个稍微有一点不一样的工作，它可能是同一 even though it could be like the same field, but 他们的 responsibility 一定会有些不一样。那你要怎么样去量身定做？
So we hope you guys join us for that, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
如果你喜欢我们的 podcast， 欢迎来追踪我们的主管英文 Executive Plus 的 Facebook。那也可以写信到我们的信箱 yourcareerplus@gmail.com。